my grandparents had a flea market with a auction house, so there was a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of business happening. And my grandfather always said every square inch of the property had to make some money. That was his claim to fame, if you will. So we had a couple of restaurants out there, and they sold chickens one day of the week, and cows one day of the week, and cars another day of the week. But what it comes down to is connecting people in that kind of business. You connect the buyer with the seller, and he would take a little fee for arranging that. But I was able to help a lot of people in the early 90s purchase foreclosure properties in the Sacramento area. I bought my first duplex when I was 19. And back then, it was hard to get people to buy houses, so they had lots of incentives. I got my first place for $38,000 and 9% interest rate by UC Davis Med Center. And, of course, it's you can't buy. I think the parking spaces in San Francisco right now, and some of those fancy condos are going for $45,000. But anyways, I opened 38 restaurants for Chevy's Fresh Max. That was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about insurance and taxes and that sort of thing. And after 9/11, I ended up looking for what was next. And for me, I interviewed with a lot of financial planning companies down there on California Street in San Francisco, and I was kind of tired of living in Sacramento and Vallejo. So I moved to San Francisco and opened up a financial planning business with American Express at the time. And now we've done an IPO, and we're called Ameriprise Financial Services. And it's really just myself and a few employees helping clients do something they probably wouldn't normally do on their own. I mean, most of us, the biggest problem I see people face is they just spend too much money. It's one thing to spend what you earn. That's bad enough, because you're not really going to be able to get anywhere. And so we kind of start off things with, what do you want for yourself? So if I were talking to a person that called in for some help, I would say, why are you calling? What do you want? And I usually hear, I don't want to live under a bridge, or, I want a higher rate of return on my money, or I think I'm paying too much income taxes, or, I'm not sure I'm saving enough. Sometimes people have too much debt. I've helped people file bankruptcy. Sometimes it's just a paperwork situation. It's a lot of turmoil to go through that, but sometimes that's the best way to do it. Just a few years after bankruptcy, most people can get their credit score up high enough that they could buy a house if they haven't bought one yet. And bankruptcy's not that bad. I mean, it's just a court proceeding, and you are admitting that you made some mistakes, and that's okay. I think it's a good, healthy thing when it comes to behaviors, right? It's good and healthy to admit some things in the past, but after that, get over it, move forward, and create those good behaviors that are healthy for you and your family. And this is not just individuals. People have these money things in their head, and it comes from oftentimes a very young age. And for me, I've always worried about not having enough. And so I might be the kind of person that saves a little bit of extra money where I could be having some more fun right now. I may not need to save all of that money for later. And I often talk about this lady that I work with. Her name is Vera. She owned a little flower shop in Berkeley, never really made a lot of money, but her stockbroker every year when she filed her taxes, you got to save, save, save. And she comes in to see me. She's like 84 years old, and she's got all this money, and she hasn't really, lived the life that she probably could have. And she would always tell me, hey, make sure your clients don't save too much money. And I'm like, well, that's not really a normal problem. Most people, you have to help them find a balance out between what you're trying to do today and, other than business related debt, or real estate, debt. You really don't want to have too much non-deductible debt, and if you've got it, you want to try to get away and try to pay it down and that sort of thing, and building up your emergency money in case there's a crisis, but also in case there's an opportunity. I was able to purchase that duplex at the age of 19 because I had saved up a little bit of money. It was only $500 back then to purchase a foreclosure property because the loans were 3% down at the time. However, they couldn't even sell them with 3% down. My normal down payment would have been 3% of $38,000, but HUD came up with a special program. If you're buying a house, it's $500 down. If you're going to buy a condo, it's $250 down. And over there on Greenback Lane, I used to sell those one-bedroom condos for $19,000, right and left, up and down Greenback Lane. They were all foreclosures by FHA, but somebody couldn't make the payments and they moved out, and somebody else needs a place to live and they want to buy it. They've got $250 in their pocket with a decent FICO score. They can get in there and secure that housing. And, that's a big one. In New York and California, especially, is securing that housing long term. That's one thing my financial planner explained to me when I was renting an apartment near a golf course that was absolutely amazing. One of the best apartments in Fair Oaks. I had a really nice apartment, and I said, I don't want to have a mortgage. That's really stressful, a 30-year mortgage. And he came out with a Lotus 1-2-3 spreadsheet and said, listen here, here's what it looks like if you pay rent from now until you're 100 and your rent goes up by 1% a year. Look at this number. And it was an unbelievably ginormous number. And then he showed me what it looks like if I bought this duplex and I made the 30 years worth of payments, and then after that I just had to pay insurance and property tax. And he said, you better be more scared of being a renter than being a homeowner. I mean, you're going to have to live somewhere. So when it comes to the outlook, we have to really figure out what people are motivated by. And I've been motivated by fear, of course, so I'm going to put away some extra money. But we go back to that. What do you want for yourself, and what is it that you're trying to do? And then you want to align yourself with some professionals. Normally, a good person to work with is a good insurance person that helps you out with renters insurance or house insurance and car insurance and life insurance and disability insurance and long-term care insurance and umbrella insurance and all of that stuff. And then you've got your financial planner, which is my role. I'm kind of helping people out with a lot of different things, and if need be, connecting them with a real estate agent, a mortgage broker, estate planning attorney, and all of those people. And I'm oftentimes called the ringleader because people will spend more time with the financial planner than anyone else because we're kind of general. But once we figure out what somebody wants to accomplish and how we can motivate them to get these things done, we've got to kind of do an x-ray. Like they just came into the ER at the hospital, and we do an x-ray and see if we can find anything that's wrong with them. And a lot of people, they don't really have anything wrong with them, but there's not a lot of things going on that's right. So we want to kind of gradually guide them into habits that are really good for them. And most people in the long run can really do well once they see how the math works. And that little $38,000 duplex is now worth $700,000. That motivates somebody when they see something like that. And a lot of times I'll even say, hey, how much did your parents buy their house for? And what is it worth now? I mean, if that doesn't motivate somebody to do something, and it's not all about buying a house. I mean, some people here in the Bay Area, they'll never buy a house. They'll be a renter forever, and that's okay. I have clients that have done well for themselves, and they have rent control in San Francisco, and they're okay there. Or a lot of times they spend most of their career in San Francisco, and then eventually after retirement, they might move out of San Francisco to a place that's more affordable. And I've had many people retire and buy a house, and I know that's kind of crazy, but you've got to have a place to live anywhere. So, kind of laying the foundation. Sister Susie Orman, one of my favorite financial personalities. She was also a waitress at the Buttercup Pantry in Berkeley. That's where she got her start. I was a waiter at Chevy's Fresh Mex and Bob's Big Boy, of course. So I like Sister Susie a lot. She says, 6 months, 6 to 9 months of your salary or 6 to 9 months of your expenses. You got to have that as a target. Put it away in your savings account or someplace like that. And that's really a big priority. That's like one of the first things. I don't care if you're 18 or 70. You got to have that emergency money in case something goes wrong or in case you have an opportunity to do something. And then after that, it's usually looking at your risk. And before you can plan for what goes right, you've got to plan for what might go wrong, and kind of looking at what kind of insurances you have, and is that enough insurance or not. 3 weeks ago, unfortunately, a woman in a really nice, amazing looking Mercedes hit me at a stoplight. And, after I got myself together, I thought, okay, so I got out, and she was dressed really nice, and she had a Mercedes, and I thought, okay, it's not too bad. We exchanged our information, and a few weeks later, I find out she had the state minimum insurance coverages, and her insurance will not cover the damage to my little car, and that sort of thing. And I thought, my gosh, what's a person driving that big old giant Mercedes? How could they not have, even decent insurance? But what's going to happen is my insurance company sues her insurance company, and then they collect money out of them somehow. So if she would have paid maybe $50 more per month in insurance premium, she would have a decent policy and protect her paycheck from a lawsuit. And it was an accident. She wasn't paying attention, and she ran the light, and she hit me. And it's kind of a bummer. So having that insurance in place is really important. And then figuring out long-term goals, and putting your money away in assets that have the possibility of growing faster than inflation. And I really look at retirement as three buckets. There's the pre-tax bucket, which we're all familiar with: pre-tax 401k and pension and IRA and things like that, 403b and 401k and 457. And those are fine and dandy. The IRS likes it when you turn 72, because they get to tell you how much you need to withdraw and pay taxes on and stuff. So not a big fan of putting all of somebody's money in that location. There's another bucket called the post-tax bucket. I call it the medium tax bucket, but regular stocks and bonds and mutual funds and rental real estate and owning a business of some kind. The taxes in that area are kind of medium compared to income taxes. So I think people should diversify from a tax basis, really, and have money in that post-tax bucket as well. But the third one is my favorite, and I just get so excited talking about tax-free. If you can imagine, here you are, you're in retirement, and you've made it, and 1/3 or 1/2 of your retirement income is federal and state tax-free, and you live in California. Wow, that's awesome. A lot of people move to Florida or Nevada in order to avoid state tax, but we could live right here in California if we have enough money put away in the tax-free bucket. And that's my favorite one. Roth 401k and Roth IRA and California tax-free bonds, and if you're healthy enough and young enough, you can pile a bunch of money into life insurance and residential real estate. You know, your first $500,000 in sale of an owner-occupied property is tax-free if you're married. That's great. I think what I might do is every other year when I get older, I might move into one of my rental properties and then sell it. And then I get 250, you know, because I'm single. But, you know, real estate is a great way to leverage yourself into more income because the rents just keep going up. And I don't look at it as being a landlord because that's kind of a challenging word these days. But I say that, hey, you know what? I'm a housing provider. I'm providing housing. Instead of buying a mutual fund for my retirement, I bought a duplex and I lived in it when I was young and that sort of thing. And now we're able to provide housing for somebody else. And we do raise their rent a little bit each year because the property taxes go up and the insurance goes up. But, you know, we can all get along and they can be nice to the house and I cannot raise their rent too much. And that's a retirement
Yeah.
asset for me, you know? So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
So you've given me so many ideas.
I'm
Very
sure.
exciting to talk about. So I guess you know, just so since we have such a general audience, you know, folks, you know, Adrian and my age, you know, around 30, and then you have folks who are in their 60s and 70s. Um, you know, we had a few questions about, you know, just generally how much does someone plan on saving for retirement, assuming, you know, the retirement age is anywhere between, you know, 65 to 70. You know, what is kind of like your general advice when you're starting with a younger client and they're looking to start putting them away? I know you mentioned the 3 buckets, but some of that advice.
Yeah, you know, that's really important. The rule of thumb nowadays, I think they and I, of course, I hate rule of thumbs because that's a good way to get an eye poked out. But they say you got to save 10% of your income. Well, yeah, that's fine if you're like 20 years old. But you know, nowadays people don't come to see the financial planner at the age of 20, you know, like I did when I was younger. Thank goodness my grandparents had one. Nowadays, people are coming to see a financial planner in their 50s. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's really challenging. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the back of the napkin math, if you will, you kind of take a look at your income right now, and whatever you're not paying in taxes or saving for retirement right now is your consumption. So, you know, if you make 100,000 a year and 30 goes to taxes and you're saving the maximum into your 401k, you know, then you're living on $50,000 a year. That's your net that you're spending. And you know, part of that might go for housing, which is either rent or mortgage. If you have a mortgage, then you're really lucky because in retirement that'll eventually be paid off. But for
Right.
sure, your mortgage rate will normally not go up. It'll be the same dollar amount for 360 payments or 30 years. So then you kind of whittle that down a little bit more. You say, oh, well, I'll have my house paid off. So maybe you only need to live on, let's just say, $36,000 is all you need to live on. If you believe that the government will provide Social Security for you at that time, then you could whittle that $36,000 down a little bit more. And we're using today's dollars to make it simple, but you might need to provide for yourself $24,000 a year in income, just living a normal kind of average life, if you will, without too much extravagance. So if you were looking at $24,000, I I think if you were going to have that for today, you would want to have probably $600,000 saved up in a tax-free bucket, right? 600,000. You make 4% a year. There's your $24,000 tax-free. You're good. But if you're going to have that money in a pre-tax bucket, then you're going to need more. You might need $800,000 because you have to share the withdrawals with the government. But if it's all tax-free, you could get by with probably 600.
Well, yeah, I mean it's really fascinating to think about how just putting $5,000 or $6,000 a year away into some of those IRA accounts can really compound like that. It doesn't seem like you're doing as much at the time, but you'll appreciate it in retirement.
Well, yeah, you look at last year in the
Yeah.
stock market. A lot of these funds last year made 30%. You know, and if you're 60 years old, and let's say you started the year out with $100,000 401k or
Mhm.
$100,000 IRA, you ended the year with $130,000 if you were fully invested in that S&P 500. I
Yeah.
mean, wow.
Yeah. Now, I guess my other question is like there's some anxiety and fear about the volatility of the market because of, all of the job losses and COVID. Do you have any advice for kind of hedging that and investing in maybe more blue chip or safer stocks, bonds, that type of thing?
We've been really fortunate in recent history with the socially responsible investing, especially
Mhm.
companies that rate high on the equality index. My company that I work at for the past 18 years, where I have my license, is Ameriprise, and we're the 246th largest company in the United States. I believe we ranked 99 or 100% on the equality index, and these socially responsible stocks like that are definitely they've really paid off in the past
Yeah.
couple of years. In the old days, I would tell people, well, if you want to be socially responsible, you're going to make 3% less. Well, so far this year, the socially responsible investments that we've been recommending for years and years and years actually stood up to the crisis. And so now we're noticing more and more people are thinking, I don't like the way this company treats their employees, and their equality index score is 24, and I'm not going to be an owner of that stock, right? So I would say that you can't look at your account value as one number. You have to look at your account value. And I'll use myself as an example. I'm 47 years old. I have to break up my account in 5 pieces, and those are 10-year pieces. So I'm not going to be allowed to pull money out of my retirement accounts, generally speaking, till I'm 59 and a half in most cases. So I tell people, listen, you got a bucket of money that you're going to use when you're 59 and a half. For me, that's like 12 years. There's going to be 2 more crises before I pull that money out. So, maybe half of that first bucket is stocks, and half of that first bucket is high quality government bonds. And, it's hard to go wrong with that. Most people that are in retirement pulling out money from their retirement accounts would have a very similar portfolio: half high quality, socially responsible, equality index very high stocks, and then corporate and government bonds 50-50. And then beyond that, the very last bucket of my retirement money is actually, in my opinion, probably not for me. I'm probably not going to spend that money. My hope is that I have enough, and that money will actually be for my nieces and nephews. So with that money, I'm very aggressive, and I buy ridiculously risky international investments and little tiny small companies here in the United States that no one has ever heard of yet, and just let those investments do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great advice because, definitely for myself, there, is a little bit of anxiety about like, oh, should I put a lot of stuff into mutual funds or kind of like an average of like 8% over time? And that's kind of the best you can hope for. But I think, really thinking about that diversified portfolio and those different categories, like you mentioned, is, really beneficial, especially for the different areas of need that you're going to have in retirement. So we have another question around couples. So I guess for LGBTQ couples in particular, is there anything special that they should take into consideration for retirement planning that maybe a hetero couple wouldn't think of or wouldn't have to do in the same way?
Yeah, at one time there was a lot of LGBT planning, and people would put that on their business card, the lawyers and all
Yeah.
of that sort of stuff. And I always thought that was kind of, it just kind of felt like it was a little a little slimy, because you got to end up with enough money that generates enough income for you to be comfortable. And I don't care who you are, that is for sure. Now, I do have to admit that I know enough about the tax laws, and I know enough about the intricacies of some retirement plans at some companies, and also having many clients that are self-employed. We do take advantage of the client's situation if we can. We have many LGBT clients that are together, and they have been together for a long time, but they're not married. And the worst question, a couple of things I just don't like, questions I don't like. How much money do I need to retire? Well, I don't know. How much do you spend? The other one is, should we get married? Like, I don't know. I mean, what does that have to do with anything? So yeah, so the couple comes to me, and they're not married, and I talk to them about if they're likely to get married legally or not in the future, and what we can do in their present status. And if they do decide to get married, what kinds of things we can take advantage there. But yeah, there are a lot of little tricks here and there. I have many couples that have decided to bring children into the situation, and many times it's very advantageous to be unmarried in that situation. But I can't be telling people not to get married. That just feels kind of icky. You don't talk to the CPA about whether you get married or not. But yeah, there are some intricacies with being married, especially for older LGBT people, that I do kind of lean on them a little bit, and I say, listen, if it doesn't really matter a lot, you could save your partner or spouse, hopefully, a substantial amount of money by getting married, because unmarried people later on in life, the benefits are just not good for people that are same-sex partners. The being married for estate planning purposes is very lucrative and juicy for people that have put away some real estate or some other assets. But and we call it the marriage penalty. But there's other ways to take advantage of things once you get married that you could not take advantage of before.
Yeah, yeah. When they don't realize that their income is gonna double or triple when they get married, in the eyes of the IRS, at least.
Yeah.
So we also had some questions about folks who are 50 plus who perhaps haven't saved enough, or another scenario where someone has like a career change later in life, maybe when they're after they're 45. What advice would you have for folks in some of those situations?
Yeah, so we kind of go back to the beginning. What do you want for yourself? And
Yeah.
oftentimes I hear from those people over 50 that they want to catch up, and I say, okay, well, how are we going to do that? Because what you've done so far, you haven't been able to get what you want, whatever that might be. I don't care. but you're telling me that you're behind. And from looking at the math here, I would agree. The government has stepped in and they've created some ways for people over 50 to put away extra money, and that's pretty nice. I sometimes tell people at that age that they probably really need to consider some of that tax-free money, because usually at the age of 50, I find most people have almost zero tax-free income in retirement as far as where they've put money so far. So we want to talk about where the income is going to come from and how much tax you'll pay. And that's a good time to figure out if you really need to spend all that money that you're spending. By the time you're 50, you should hopefully be in your groove, and you're not out looking for certain activities that you might have been looking for when you were younger. And hopefully you're ready to kind of settle down a little bit, and you're not out at the mall shopping and buying the latest t-shirt or what have you. And kind of that retirement income security becomes what you purchase. And we try to make it cool and sexy for people to purchase their retirement now. If I could put a price tag, and I can with my software, if I could put a price tag on a comfortable retirement for you and tell you what it costs every 2 weeks, I think most people would buy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now the career changers, we see that sometimes, and we see it sometimes at 50. A lot of times they're kind of tired of what they were doing, and they're thinking of possibly downsizing. They want to do something different where they may not make as much money, or they want to open up a business, or who knows. There's always some kind of thing going on around there. I mean, I guess inappropriately you would call it a midlife crisis. A lot of people think they hit it at 30, but we're living to be 100 now. My aunt just turned 102 in January, and she was driving until she was about 97. So we're living longer and longer. When they first designed Social Security, people died on average at age 58, and early Social Security was 62. So half the people at that time were not even going to make it to collect on Social Security. But if we're living longer and longer, I think the midlife opportunity zone, as I call it, happens around age 50, and people might want to slow down a little bit more, meaning that they might possibly work until they're 70 because they like the second career so much. I meet these people that they help people do their resume now, or they help people do their LinkedIn profile, or they help people do these things where they're just excited to do it when they wake up in the morning. And they say, yeah, you know what, Mark, I don't need to retire at 60 anymore because I really enjoy what I'm doing. I'm helping people. I get paid okay. I mean, not a lot, but okay. So if they're willing to work till 70 and manage their expenses a little bit better, that can work out too. We have to change the expectations. So you're not going to retire at 60 with a Mercedes and a house in Pacific Heights. You might retire at 70 with a house in El Sobrante driving a Honda.
Yeah, much more realistic. Now we also had a question. Maybe I'll ask this one, and then maybe Adrian can kind of talk about some concerns around student loans and debt around that. We had one question around if you're able to convert a regular 401k and IRA over to a Roth once it's already been opened. Is that something that's possible?
Yeah, we're doing a lot of that right now because the value of the 401k or the traditional IRA could be lower than it was at the beginning of the year. So we would be adding the value of whatever we convert to your W-2, if you will. So you are going to pay whatever income tax you normally pay on that money. So if you normally make $50,000 a year and you want to do a $20,000 conversion, your W-2 is now effectively 70, right? So sometimes what we're doing is helping people take losses on lousy stocks that they bought to help with that conversion. Sometimes people might be giving, let's just say they're giving, maybe they're giving $2,000 a year to the Solano Pride Center, right? They're doing that on a pretty regular basis, and they're probably going to continue doing that. We might tell them to do a $20,000 donation to a donor advised fund right now, and do a $20,000 conversion to a Roth right now, and then next year, the next 9 years of donations to the Solano Pride Center would come out of their own private donor advised fund. So they get the tax deduction when they need it, and then the Solano Pride Foundation gets the money when they need it. So we're doing a lot of that. Sometimes people say, well, I want to pay the tax with my IRA money. Well, then it's not so sexy, because if you're over 50, you can do a non-deductible traditional IRA contribution for $7,000 today, and you can convert it to a Roth tax-free tomorrow. So, 3 years of that's 21 grand, and you didn't have to, pay a lot of extra tax. So sometimes people come in with that great idea of doing a conversion, and I love doing conversion. I think it's great. But if the tax bite is too hard, we might just want to put some fresh money into a Roth directly, if you can, if your income is low enough. Or if your work allows a Roth 401k, you could put $19,000 there for a guy my age. If you're 50 or older, you can do an additional $6,000. There's no reason to do a conversion if you're not maximizing those contributions. And I think there was a question about a student loan.
Yeah, I think, Adrian, if you wanted to ask about, student loan debt and, how people in their 20s and 30s after college or grad school can kind of some strategies around that.
Yeah, do you want to just answer that? I mean, Jonathan basically. Well, I kind of wanted to dive into that, but also maybe, and this is maybe because it's more personal for me, but when you have your bachelor's, but also when you're going for your master's, and what areas, where do you want to pull those loans from? Where do you want to look for funding? Well, what do you want to do with that? Like, that's definitely, post bachelor's, maybe working for a few years, reevaluating. What do you do? How do you balance that out?
And how do you kind of manage that when you're on limited income and possibly taking out more student loans and deferring other payments?
Well, I would tell you, if you can, don't be taking any gap years, because that could turn into a gap decade. So if you can, go full steam ahead. One thing is, when you're in school, you get to defer the old loans, right?
Yep.
I think that's great. Yeah, defer it. The interest rate's not very high anyways. I bet you they're all below 9%, right?
Yeah, just about.
Yes. Yep. So, and then I bet if you get a master's degree, you'll be smarter and you'll have more opportunities for jobs that pay you more, and you'll be able to probably definitely live where you want to, in case you wanted to move around a little bit, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So I tell people, hey, don't be slowing down. Don't do any of this gap. I mean, if you have to for mental health purposes or for family purposes or what have you, I totally get that. But I tell them to try to go into that right away and go out there and look for all of that money. I mean, I had somebody from the San Francisco Foundation talk to me one time over lunch, and they had a scholarship for a female Asian person studying podiatry. So,
very specific.
Very specific.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, they've got software now that helps people find these things, but there was a very wealthy podiatrist from the Central Valley that left this endowment for this scholarship. And we try not to let people get too specific, because you might have a couple of years where you can't find someone for that money, and that really sucks. But through networking and through research, and then definitely the school that you're going to, they really want you to go there, but they spend a little bit more time with people that are nice and needy. Nice and needy. So you be really nice to the entrance people or the guidance people or what have you, and you let them know that life would be better for you if you could get some information. You don't want them to do the work for you right now. We'll ask them to do that later. But right now, you just want some information about places you can go or places that have given good scholarships or grants in the past. So we always go after the free money first. Now, I believe there's a ton of free money out there that is unused. I mean, that one scholarship I think went unused for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of money out there that's unused, but it takes a lot of work to get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you want to let the family members know and remind them what you're doing and how happy and smart you'll be when you're done. And I'm just saying this from experience, folks. There are people in your family, maybe, who have more money than you think they do, and they might be willing to here and there contribute. And you just kind of have to let them know what's going on. And I tell my clients all the time, I don't care how old you are, if you're going to buy a house, you need to tell everybody in your family that you're going to buy a house, because there are people that find that to be very special and they want to contribute here and there. And here I am with half or 30% of my clients over 70. They want to contribute to their children and their grandchildren's well-being in most cases. And you might have to hear about it. They've sacrificed eating water and top ramen when they were in college. Listen to it, smile, say thank you, tell them how smart they are. They can write really large checks, and I've seen it. Just a couple of weeks ago, I told one of my clients to let their parents in on what they're doing, and sure enough, the parents said, well, you know, we know it's hard these days, and the bigger down payment you have, the smaller your loan will be, and you know, we want to give you $50,000. I'm like, you know, there's money out there with the family. You got to talk to the family, and then borrow more money than you need. Okay, borrow all the money that anyone will loan you, but don't spend it. Spend what you have to, and the rest of that money set aside in case things don't go right somehow or what have you, and you have a challenge in the future that money would solve. You'll have that money sitting on the side. But the interest rates on loans right now are really, really low. Mm-hmm. And if you have an income that's low enough, you can actually deduct the student loan interest on your income taxes. And that's great. So you're purchasing an appreciating asset, your IQ, and you're purchasing it with someone else's money, which is awesome. Your interest rate is fairly low given the circumstances, and it's possibly deductible for a while. Wow. Now, eventually, you're going to make so much money that the interest will not be deductible, and then we should have a beer or something, because that's good that you're making so much money that the government has decided you cannot deduct the student loan interest. Now, some people ask me, hey, should I be in a hurry to pay off my student loans? In most cases, I say no, because it helps your FICO score making that payment. And unless you've secured your housing, I would say building up the money for the down payment. I have some clients that are retired and they still have student loans because the interest rate's really low, like 4% or what have you. Last year, they made 30% in the stock market. I mean, what are you going to do with extra money? Are you going to throw it at the 4% student loan? Or are you going to throw it in your long-term investments that in 9 out of 10 years make you more than 8%, right?
Is there any concern with that around like your debt to income ratio? If you're trying to buy a house and you have like maybe, you know, $100,000 in student loans from university, is there any concern with that when you're trying to think about strategies for paying it down?
Yeah, there could be. I mean, I tell people to certainly sit down with a qualified loan broker. And I say loan broker because, you know, I got really delayed by going to a very large, well-known bank when I was 19 years old and they very politely patted me on the head and said, "Oh, sorry, you don't qualify to buy a house." And I thought, "Oh, that really sucks." And I told the financial planner, and he said, "Oh no, those people are idiots. Let me have you talk to Deborah. She's a mortgage broker. She gets paid when you buy a house." So I sat down with Deborah, and she said, "Oh, well, yes, we have these FHA first-time homebuyer programs, and for 3% down, you can do this. And oh, by the way, no one's buying them, so if you have $500 down, you can get one." And so it worked out really well. But I tell people not to be doing any activities with credit cards, loans, anything like that until you sit down with somebody who gets paid to get you a loan, because they can tell you, "Oh, $100,000 is too much with your current income. So you either need to increase your income or you need to pay this loan down by $12,000 in order to hit the magic DTI, debt to income ratio, right?" And to buy your first house, Sister Susie Orman completely disagrees with me. This is one of the few times when her and I disagree. I normally deal with really high quality, smart people. So I feel that it's okay to borrow against your 401k or borrow against your life insurance to purchase a place to live in, or even a rental property that is going to appreciate in value. Most of my clients are, the people I deal with are pretty good. They behave. They don't make ridiculous decisions and that sort of thing. So I have borrowed from my 401k and my life insurance many, many times when I was a little tight on cash, but real estate was cheap, like 2008, 2009, 1992, 2012. I just get into the property, get the loan, and then I try to pay the 401k or the life insurance loan back as soon as I can. Now, if you're going to take a loan against your retirement to buy a Mercedes, well, I just have a hard time. That's a depreciating asset that is not deductible. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what are your thoughts on earning passive income in this economy?
Yeah, that's kind of my favorite. That middle bucket, post-tax investments, oftentimes would be rental real estate. We've got a place over there in Vallejo. We bought it for 102. It's now worth about 500. That doesn't matter, right? I don't care what it's worth. I'm not going to sell it till I'm dead. What matters is the mortgage is $838 and the renter is paying $2,600. Okay, that's what matters, right? Now, people say that real estate is passive income. I kind of disagree. I have enough real estate that it's not passive. I just had to do an $11,000 repair on that property because the previous tenant was misbehaving. So if you want to talk about passive income, I don't normally include real estate in that, because when you have several properties, I try to keep all mine close by. When you have several properties, it's a part-time job. And I tell you what, I like it because I get paid very well when that mortgage is still $838, but the rent goes up every time a tenant moves out. So when they move out, I don't normally mind if they haven't trashed it. But passive income for me really is money that you don't have to work for. And so in that case, what are the instruments that we can purchase that won't cause us to work or to sweat or to take time away from our family or the things that we like? And we're talking about high quality, socially responsible, usually large cap companies that pay a really nice dividend. In my opinion, real estate investment trusts and bonds and large companies that pay a healthy dividend, those are passive income. And you can own them in your pre-tax bucket, your post-tax bucket, or your tax-free bucket. So people think they have to do all that in their 401k. Well, no. Why don't you buy that kind of investment in your Roth IRA and those dividends are tax-free for the rest of your life. And when you die, the person you give the Roth IRA to does not have to be your spouse. It could be your same-sex partner or the lady next door or the guy behind you. They get it tax-free too. So you don't have to be married to give a Roth IRA away upon death tax-free. And that's what I see as passive income. Some people say real estate is passive, but I've been a landlord since 1992, or a housing provider since 1992, and it's work, but I get paid really well for that work, and I love the tenants. I've been pretty good friends with many of the tenants. I've helped them buy houses themselves, and I really look at it as a partnership where they need a place to stay, and I'm tired of mutual funds, so I have a duplex.
Well, I think that that's a really nice segue into talking about legacy giving and estate planning. In my previous roles before I became executive director here, I was working in development for nonprofits and foundations. And so you mentioned donor advised funds. I'm pretty familiar with that, but our audience may not be. So kind of what is your general advice for folks who, because the biggest thing I would hear from folks is that they don't think that they have an estate, and everyone has an estate, right? Some are much larger than others, of course, but just generally, what is your advice on, leaving behind, money to your spouse or partner, your children, to a nonprofit, to your church, whatever it is?
I grew up in a pretty religious household, and it was required that you gave 10%, and that was, I'm serious, like a requirement. And then they had extra lines on the envelope for the foreign ministry, 2%, and the children's ministry 3%, and all this stuff. And
sounds like we went to the same church.
Yeah. So if you did everything, sometimes it'd be 20%, and it just blew my mind. But I tell you what, my grandparents, my parents, most of the family members, they've paid that their whole life, and they've all done quite well. So I think giving is not something you should delay, and it's not something you should really wait on. I think most people can start. They can start with something, and thankfully most people work at fairly big companies these days. You can do giving through work where you get matched, and I think our match right now is 1-for-1 up to $1,500, and it goes through the paycheck. There's no thinking about it, and it's done. And then beyond that, right now a lot of organizations are hurting, and there's a lot of funding that used to be there that's not there, and so we have people calling us up. And I had a lady call me up, and she said, I'm going to donate $10,000 to this organization here. And I said, okay, well, let's look at everything. Well, sure enough, she had forgot that she had a mutual fund in her middle bucket that she had been putting $100 in a month for a long time. And even though the market was down in March, she still had about a 300% profit on this mutual fund. And I said, listen, why don't we take the $10,000 from this mutual fund, and I will place it into your donor advised fund, and then you can have the donor advised fund give the money to charity, and you're going to end up saving quite a bit of money on taxes. And she said, oh, that seems like a good idea. And I said, well, wait a minute. You're probably going to be continuing to give money to this group. What if we did more for this year, because she had some other things going on. So I think I really encourage people, whatever it is, however small it is, to try to give some time and try to give some money to the organizations that are important to them, that are doing the work that other organizations are not doing. So they should try to volunteer if they can. And there's a lot of ways to volunteer. It's not just the hard work part of it, but also giving a little bit of money each month from their paycheck, and then sometimes doing an analysis of the investments they have. Those people that are now over age 72, they can do qualified charitable distributions from their IRAs where they don't have to use it as an itemized deduction where they did in the past because they could itemize. Now they get to take their full standard deduction of $24,000 for a married couple or $12,000 for single, and they can have me cut a check from the IRA to the charity, and that's completely bypassing the tax system. So I encourage people to give early and to give often, even just a little bit, because it's so fulfilling when you're able to do that. And when you're in that habit, it makes buying your retirement even that much more important, right? And they could include the organization or agency inside their living trust, or they could include it inside their will. But if you're 70, you're going to live another 30 years. You don't even know the people that are running the organization at that time, and you can't even see how impactful your money is. So we try to help people figure out if they have enough for what they're doing right now, for their own expenses and that sort of thing. If there is a little bit extra per month or per year, or when the stock market does good, my clients will give a little more to their charities. And when the stock market does bad, sometimes they give a little more because the charity's broke. But, trying to have them give earlier. I just feel like giving earlier is a lot better for the organization and also for the person.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, I think that's really sage advice. Especially for some of those instruments that people may not be as familiar with, like a donor advised fund, where you're getting the immediate tax write-off, and then the money can sit there and it could even potentially grow, and then you're able to give it to multiple charities even from the same pie. So I think that's a pretty neat tool.
Yeah, it takes me 10 minutes to set one of those up. We're setting them up at least 2 or 3 every month. I mean, it's very easy. It's not as complicated as it used to be. You used to have to start them with a whole bunch of money. But I think the minimum right now for the one that we're using, which happens to be a socially responsible vendor, the minimum is about $5,000. And some people kind of dip their toes with that, and eventually they start adding more assets to it. You could add real estate, you could add lots of things later, but getting it open and funded and seeing how it works starts feeling good.
Yeah, definitely. So my other area of questions, we talked about real estate a little bit already, but advice for you that you would give to folks who are considering buying either a condo or a house. Would you suggest that they wait maybe another couple months because of the market, or should they take advantage of it now because of the really low interest rates? What would you say?
That's kind of tricky. Whenever people try to time the market, they're usually disappointed. So I kind of look at it this way. If you need a place to live right now, and if you have the ability to purchase something right now, meaning that your FICO score is good enough and you have enough money for the down payment, and we're thinking about the time horizon, right? I need a place to live probably for myself another 53 years until I'm 100. Now, I may not live in this house forever, but owning this house that I bought for a long time is going to be a good idea for me, even if I bought at the top of the 2007 real estate market. Those people that did that at that time, the values have recovered. I've had clients buy at the top of the 2000 market, and then in 2009, they moved out and bought a nicer house, right? Another reason to put down the smallest down payment you can in some cases. 20% avoids the private mortgage insurance. And I think the piggyback loans have come back where you do 10% down, the 10% second loan, 90% first loan. And that some of those are avoiding PMI right now. Again, a good mortgage broker would help you out with that. But if you need a place to live and you have the ability to buy a place right now, and you find one that that you like. Now, you're not looking for a casket. And I used to tell people this when I was a realtor. You're not looking for a place to die or anything like that. You're looking for a place that is okay for the next 3 to 5 years of your life. Now, you might be like my uncle. He's lived in the same house for 52 years. Once he got out of the Marines, he bought a house and he's lived there for 52 years. That's really rare. I believe on average, people live in a house for about 8 years. I tell people, look at a place that you can afford, that you'll be moderately happy with for the next 3 to 5 years. Get yourself into that, fill it out, see if it's okay. If it's great, maybe you'll live there for a long time. But 3 to 5 years from now, if you're pretty good with your money, you'll be able to buy another place and you'll have that one as a rental, giving you that so-called passive income, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the idea of a duplex or something like that, if it has like a in-law suite in the backyard, I mean, I think that that's a great opportunity if that's something that folks are able to swing because of the income that they can generate and the way that they can, help out someone who needs a place to live too.
Yeah. And the qualifications for 4 units or less, those are still usually Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, government-backed loans. And the qualifications for those are usually, pretty good. And then if you're very fortunate to have been a service member, if you have a VA access, I mean, thank you for your service, number one. But number two, they finally wised up and decided to stop the discrimination on VA loans. And when I was a realtor, people would say, ew, your buyer has a VA loan, they'll never find a house. Well, now it's illegal to discriminate against a veteran. That should have been a law a long time ago. But they should still be able to purchase a house with 100% financing if they have that VA certificate, as long as their income can qualify them to make the payment. Now, that doesn't mean that they should do 100% financing, but if they had to stretch it out a little bit, like if they were married and their spouse wasn't working full time, they might stretch it out a little bit and buy a bigger house. And when their spouse goes back to work, it'll be a little more comfortable. Sometimes, like a dentist that comes out of dental school, they can't buy much really early. But, most of these dentists, they make pretty good money eventually. So they'll be able to grow in there. So I usually feel like with housing and with real estate and with the stock market, if it's a long-term hold or a long-term investment, which all of those are, you're pretty good in buying it today. The value will certainly go up and down. The value does not really matter until you have to sell. Well, don't sell in a bad year. If you can. I mean, that would be ideal. But the other thing is you're creating an income asset, that house that you bought at a very high price. And I remember my friends telling me in 1992, oh, don't buy a house now. They're too expensive. The economy's going to get worse. They're going to close more military bases. There's going to be another Loma Prieta earthquake in Sacramento. Don't buy a house now. Well, I needed a place to live. I ignored them. I bought a house, and I bought another one in what was that, 2008, and bought another one in 2009, another one in 2012, and so far things have been okay. You got to have a place to live anyways. Why not have it be tax deductible, and why not have it appreciate in value?
Definitely, yeah. Now, we also had another question around for some financial advice for folks who are struggling right now, either because they lost their job or they're underemployed or unemployed, trouble making rent. Do you have any tips or strategies for folks in some of those situations?
Yeah, let's handle the rent thing first. So, I'm a housing provider, and as soon as things started going down, I reached out to the tenants and I said, listen, I don't know where you are right now. You may not know where you are right now, but I want you to tell me when you know about something. If you get laid off tomorrow, please call me and tell me tomorrow, because I have bills. and the mortgage company is not offering much help. The property taxes are still due. I got to pay the insurance, and I've been able to put away a little bit of money aside for these calamities. But I tell the tenants, tell me right now, and with my clients that are renters, I always tell the landlord how things are going so that they're not too surprised. Don't wait until the 5th of the month to tell them you can't pay. I have one tenant that has some problems once in a while, and she'll tell me on the 20th or the 25th, hey, I'm having a hard time. I'm probably not going to be able to pay until the 5th or the 10th. And I say, hey, that's okay. Another situation, I offered the tenant who's paying $1,400 a month. I said, hey, if it would make things easier for you, why don't you give me $1,000 a month now, and later on we'll catch up on the other $400 when things are okay. Now, I never thought it would last this long, but there's a lot of agencies, believe it or not, that will help you. So the Salvation Army is a great one. They're amazing if they still have any money left, which they should, because in Solano County, I think they're funded by the McDonald's guy. The Kroc Center is one of them over there. But a lot of these churches, a lot of these nonprofit organizations, there's one in Contra Costa County called Shelter Incorporated, and they paid one of my they paid one of my tenants' entire month of her rent, and all she had to do was fill out the application, do an interview. I had to do an interview, and I had to give them my social security number, and they mailed me a check the next day. So there's a lot of places near where you live right now or in your county right now, and you might call the church down the street, especially if it's a really large church with a really nice lawn, because they probably have money available. And it doesn't matter if you're a member, you're a local person in that community. We were on the committee in my church when I was a kid. We were kind of in charge of that account. And whether you're a member or not doesn't matter. You're local to the neighborhood and you need help. And you got to reach out to people and tell them where you are. Now, there's a lot of legislation if you have put away your own money. And I think it's hilarious sometimes. The government lets you help yourself with your own money before they help you with anything. But you can now borrow $100,000 out of your 401k if your balance is $200,000 or more. So the old rule was you could borrow $50,000 if your balance was $100,000 or more, and you pay that back over a 5-year period at very low interest rates. So that's kind of nice. Then they passed another rule. It says if you need to withdraw money from your 401k before you're age 59 and a half because of COVID-19 problems, they're going to waive the 10% state penalty and waive the 10% federal penalty, and you'll just pay normal income tax on whatever your income tax rate is usually for that year. Or if you want to, you could take 3 years to pay that back. So if you're so fortunate to have a Roth 401k like me, then I could take out $100,000 from my Roth 401k, even though I'm only 47, and pay no tax and no penalty. So when that became available in, I think 2010 is when they started making the Roth 401k available. Some people have taken advantage of that, and they have money in there. You can also possibly borrow money against your middle bucket. That's the post-tax bucket. Let's say you have money at Schwab or Fidelity or some other place like that. You might consider doing a pledge loan or a margin loan against that money. The interest rates are negotiable, and they want to keep you as a customer, and they want to keep you owning those stocks because the stocks will do nothing but go up from here, supposedly. So, but really reaching out to local community places. I'm a member of the Solano Sunset Rotary. We meet there in Vallejo on Wednesdays. In the old days at the Marriott Hotel, We've been buying groceries from grocery outlet and having them delivered to people that have signed up, or somebody knows that they might be able to use some extra food. The food banks are out there providing a lot of help these days. And, off the record, you can show up to almost any school site and tell them how many kids you have to feed, and they just load up your car with food, and then you leave. You don't have to bring the kids with you or any of that sort of thing. But, there's a lot of help out there right now, but a lot of times I find people are just not ready to accept it. And I tell them, get out there and go looking for it. The Elks Lodge, the Moose Lodge, the Eagles Lodge, all of these fraternal organizations, the Mason Lodge, they have money. They have lots of money. They have not spent money on an event like this, some of them in 50 years. They've been building up money for 50 years. And some of these groups will call us because we run the money for some of these endowments. And they say, oh, we're getting a lot of applications. We don't know how much money we should grant. And I'm like, listen, you started this endowment with $50,000, and now it's up to $500,000. You can give away $450,000. This is the time. We may not have a situation like this for another 100 years. You got to get that money out there and helping people. So I tell people to be honest with themselves first. Be honest with the people that Let them know you're looking for help. There's no embarrassment or shame in that. And get out there and start asking the local organizations that are 501c3s.
That's excellent advice.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Another question from the audience was, when should people sign up for Medicare?
Oh, yeah, that's a no-brainer. 3 months before age 65, if you're healthy. If you're not healthy, then you would qualify earlier if you're completely disabled, like you've got kidney dialysis or things like that. But yeah, even if you're working, most of the time Medicare will become your primary payer, and then the insurance you get from work will kind of like be a Medigap policy, and the premium will be reduced quite a bit. But that's another thing to think about in retirement. You are going to pay for Medicare, and if you don't sign up on time, they're going to make you pay more when you eventually do sign up, because they figure they're missing out on those premium payments. So 3 months before you're 65, get going on that. And I don't know of anybody that hasn't received 2 pounds a week of Medicare information. As you get closer, they all know where you are, and you get these solicitations from AARP and from United Healthcare and all this stuff. And Medicare is a really great program that normally pays for a lot of what you need for healthcare, but it wasn't really designed when we had drugs, so they had to add Part D for drugs to that, because they didn't think about drugs back then. People didn't really take them for medical purposes at that time, so they had to add Part D to that. And some people say, well, should I get Part D or not? Well, if you don't take any pills, I can understand how you might not. But if you don't take Part D in the beginning, they'll charge you more for it later. And most people are going to need pills at some time. So I would say sign up for it. And the AARP has a program. Now with Medicare, there's regular Medicare where you've got Part A and B and Part D, for drugs. That's kind of like the normal situation. For some people, it's kind of complicated, and they don't want to pay a lot of money because they're pretty healthy and that sort of thing. Well, they might benefit more from Medicare Part C, which is kind of like an all-in-one plan where they sometimes might offer some dental help, and they might offer some vision help. I'll be wearing glasses forever. So sometimes Medicare Part C might be a better deal, especially if you're healthy. The premiums tend to be a little bit lower in these major metropolitan areas, and that might be a way to go. So my mom was on regular Medicare for a long time, And once she got past all of her health concerns, we got the pancreas cancer clear and all this other stuff that was going on that was worrying her. She wasn't really sick, but they kept thinking that she might be. So once she had her 10-year cancer thing done, the very next year she switched to Part C because the premium is lower and there's a couple of other things that are added in there that are not in regular Medicare.
Wow.
HICAP is the place to go to. Nonprofit, varies by county, but HICAP, HI-CAPP. I think they come out to the Florence Douglass Senior Center once a month in Vallejo, but you can get them on the phone and Zoom right now. HICAP is nonprofit, and they're usually pretty knowledgeable about the different plans, and that would be a good way to go. If you talk to a health insurance agent, you know, they get paid commission. The larger plan you buy, the more money they make. It's kind of like realtors. The larger house you buy, the more money they make. So, you know, HICAP I've found to be a pretty good source of information.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Now, I have a question about insurance as well. So for folks to, you know, for me at least, it seems like buying life insurance or something like that, it seems a little daunting and I don't really know where to start. What would you suggest?
Well, yeah, you got to talk to somebody like me that helps out with all of those things. You know, I'm kind of a generalist, and then when it's needed, I call in a specialist. So if you're talking about health insurance, I have a lot of experience, good and bad, in operating Chevy's Fresh Max and being self-employed and working for a large company. If you're healthy, then you might consider a high deductible plan. Like myself, I pay $90 a month for my high deductible plan, and I put money away pre-tax in my health savings account, and I plan on using that when I'm old to buy a lot of pills and whatever else I'm going to need when I'm older, right? But if you're not so healthy and you have some health concerns, or you're using doctor's services and things like that now, you might need to get what's known as a regular health insurance plan, if you will, platinum, gold, silver, bronze, that sort of thing. Depending on your income, you might get some help in those premiums, but you've got to watch out. You know, I've got some people that are diabetic, and you know, some people have some very serious long-term health concerns where they're going to have some really delicious health insurance for the rest of their life because they've got some medications they're taking. That I have one client that told me yesterday, she told me the pill she was taking and they were changing the price. The pill was $4,000 a month for her heart condition, and she was somehow, the insurance company was getting it for $2,000 a month, and then she was getting it for $40 a month. Well, now it's off the formulary. So now she has to go to a different insurance company or change drugs. You know, so health insurance is a big one. We have to be very picky. We have to read all the fine print. Thankfully, we can change health insurance almost every year. So that's a pretty nice situation. And then, you know, life insurance, here we are. We've got a plan for what could go wrong before we can plan for what can go right. And life insurance, disability insurance, health insurance, and long-term care insurance are things that people just skip out on so much, and then they want to cry later on that they, you know, thought about doing it, but they didn't want to pay the $57 per month for the life insurance. You know, if you're healthy, life insurance is easy and cheap. If you're not healthy, then we have to get crafty, because there are ways to get some smaller life insurance benefits by doing some things that normal people wouldn't necessarily do. But if you're healthy, you know, getting a life insurance policy, I always think about, well, how much is your paycheck, and how many more years are you going to earn that paycheck, right? So that's kind of where we start at the upper end of that. So, you know, if you're a healthy 30-year-old person, you might have another 20 to 30 years of working, that's a huge paycheck. Well, the other thing is, if you die too early, is there someone that needs your paycheck?
Mm-hmm.
In my case, yes, because I help out my mom a little bit and my two brothers and my nieces and nephews. So, and it's been like that for a long time. So that's what I think about when I bought my first life insurance policy. The lady said, "Well, how much money do you make, and how long are you going to make that money?" So a lot of people will say, "Well, gosh, that's $2 million. I don't want to buy a $2 million life insurance policy." Okay. How much money do you make in the next 10 years? Maybe you purchase a 10-year policy for how much money you think you're going to make in the next 10 years. And then usually 5 years from now, we need to reevaluate things because things change a lot during that time. Or if you're married now or have someone that is important to you that depends on your paycheck, and you're already making pretty good money for life here in the Bay Area, you might buy a 30-year policy that has no cash value or benefit at all. It's just pure insurance, 30 years term. You buy it and you're good until you're 60 if you're a 30-year-old now. And that's pretty awesome. Eventually, a lot of times you end up running out of places to hide the money. If you're doing pretty good, you're maxing out the 401k, you're maxing out the IRA, you're kind of running out of places for hiding money from the taxation. Then you're going to end up with one of those fancy policies that will allow you to add extra money. And thankfully, when I was pretty young, I learned about those, and over the years, I've bought a few of them. And when I have extra money, I send it to the life insurance company because when it goes in there, one of them is a money market account and it makes 4%. That's the first one I ever bought. It's boring, but 4% is pretty good. Then I eventually bought another one that allows me to invest in socially responsible investments. And if I want to, tobacco, alcohol, and firearms as well, or the S&P 500. But some of them have mutual funds inside of there. And if life is going really well for you and you've run out of places to hide money, you might convert one of your old policies into one of those if it's allowed. Or if you're young enough, healthy enough, and you have enough money, you might buy a new one. But people often overlook life insurance until they get high blood pressure, or until they're diabetic, or until their next door neighbor dies. Unfortunately, in my life, I've noticed people have died at a pretty young age. My best friend in elementary school, he died in high school, and so I knew at a pretty early age somebody extremely close to me that died at a very young age. So I knew that it could happen. Thankfully, it's happened to other people and not me. But we're just not in control of that. And there's enough things I do with my paycheck that I would want to continue after I die. There's some money to some organizations that if I died, I would want them to get a gift or to get some kind of regular gift or something. And, my family, of course, they get to do some extra things because I can help them out with some extra money. I would want that to continue. And that's a big reason for life insurance. But if that's not the case for you, skip out on the life insurance. What the heck? But the disability insurance is a big one, especially if the company you work at doesn't have any. Then you're going to find yourself buying a separate standalone policy. And again, if you're young and healthy and you make less than $100,000, those policies are really, really cheap.
Wonderful. Well, I know we've covered a bunch of topics and we're getting close to time. Were there any other areas that we missed or anything else that you'd like to highlight? I could talk to you for hours, and I think I'll probably call you after this.
Oh, yeah.
Probably next week.
We'll do a private meeting on the computer for now, but most of my meetings are normally at a really nice restaurant or a fancy bar because that's how I like to do things. Yeah. And what I'm doing now is I'm having food delivered to the person's house an hour before our video meeting, so that way at least I can pretend like we went out to dinner. So yeah, anyone here that might want to talk to me about things that they have questions about, or things that they want to, this is normally a very specific personal situation, and I tried to answer the questions as broad as I could, but there could be something in your life that's very particular, and it might cause me to say, don't buy a house now. You should buy one in a year. Or, there could be another situation where I say, oh yeah, you absolutely have to do a living trust as soon as possible because of whatever. But I don't charge anything for the first meeting or anything like that. And I really do love helping people out. And it doesn't matter if they're going to work with me or not. Oftentimes I send people back to the financial planner that they're working with a couple of pointers, because people have had really long relationships with their financial planners and their insurance person. And maybe I just asked a question in a different way that brought up a different possibility. And they could go back to their financial planner and pretend to be really smart and say, what about doing a Roth conversion this year? And the financial planner will say, whoa, you're a genius.
Because I got advice from you.
Well, they don't have to say that, it's okay. I've had some really tough situations. I had a family that came in that was $3 million underwater. I helped them file bankruptcy. I helped them sell 8 properties. And, now they're back up to about $500,000 they've put away. But we saved their house, we saved their business, and we saved their 2 cars, which were very expensive, nice cars. But, there's nothing that you're going through right now that we probably have not seen. And this is a small community in some cases, and you might be surprised. It's a very large community in many cases, and we've got to help each other out. I don't care where you came from or what you look like or what you're trying to accomplish. We all should try to help each other out a little bit. We might need some help in the future. I've been very lucky to benefit from mental health services, from lawyers that have helped me out, and insurance people that have helped me out over the years. And I always feel like we kind of have to give back our time, we have to give back our knowledge, and sometimes we have to give back our cash, because people can do things with our cash. The things that the Solano Pride Center can do with a little extra money to get the outreach done and that sort of thing. I can't do that kind of stuff. If I give you the money, you can go out and make a difference. Same thing with the food bank. Don't drop off your extra oranges at the food bank. They're just not really designed for that. They'll be nice and they'll say thank you, but we volunteer at the food bank every year. What they can do with money is unbelievable. If you want to help them out, go down there and sort the food. That could really help them out.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I really like that you highlighted the importance of relationships and the way that we're able to give back. I definitely believe that brings returns that are not just financial. So thank you so much, Mark. I really appreciate you taking the time tonight. I know that there were a lot of folks who are really interested about this episode. So we will be sure to send out your contact info if that's okay with you. And we'd like to have you back sometime, and I'm sure folks will be reaching out.
Awesome.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if you live in Vallejo, your dinner will come from Provisions in
Ooh.
Vallejo, a really nice family-owned business. The ladies over there make awesome food. And if you live in another city, I'll have to have you pick a restaurant. But
yes, Provisions is quite good. I ordered a cake from them for my mom's 60th. It was great. Yeah.
Was it the Pride cake?
I've ordered that before, but no, it was she likes strawberries and cream, so that's the one I got.
Oh, I want to order the Pride cake just for the heck of it, because that thing looks fantastic.
It just looks so good. Yeah. All right. Well, happy Pride, and please stay safe and be well. And thank you so much again for taking the time, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah,
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you.
All right. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.